Hey guys, thanks for joining me. If you're new, do hit the subscribe button as well as the bell so anytime any new content is uploaded, you'll be the first to check it out. It is, of course, with heavy heart to even cover this video. If you're anything like me, more than likely you have been watching this from the very beginning. What I have put together, what you're about to check out, is what I have found to be the most informative in terms of the possibilities around what may have gone wrong aboard the Titan. Of course, we will not conclusively know until the ship is actually recovered. So let's check it out.
Mystery of the deep. As hopes fade for the 5 wealthy Titanic tourists who vanished while exploring the wreck aboard a mini submarine, one question keeps arising. What happened?
Exactly.
It is possible that
as I mentioned before, you guys, I'm not going to interrupt this too much, but as I mentioned before, the only way we will conclusively know what happened is if the wreckage, if the submarine, if it's actually recovered. So this is kind of speculation into it, but I think that some of the possibilities are, probably, like I say, the closest I've come to actually providing any real explanation. And then after this, there's also a little extra footage that I think is worth checking out as well. All right.
We'll ever know after the sub, called Titan, suddenly went silent hundreds of miles off the coast of Canada and around 13,000 feet underwater beside the Titanic.
13,000 feet, you guys.
On board was a British billionaire, one of Pakistan's richest men and his son, a famed French explorer, and the CEO of the company running the dive. They began their voyage early Sunday with 96 hours of oxygen inside the sub and have not been heard
Sorry guys,
from
also
since.
A 19-year-old on board.
Submarine
so
experts agree that 5 possible accidents are the most likely cause. Perhaps the most obvious explanation is that the submersible became tangled in the wreckage of the Titanic itself.
This is a strong possibility.
The ship split into 2 pieces as it sank back in 1912, and those sections now lie amidst a huge debris field on the seabed. Navigating the wreck is extremely dangerous, according to those who have dived it. It is possible that the sub's pilot got disoriented, perhaps after communications were interrupted, causing the craft to get snagged.
So
Another
crazy.
explorer has described how a sudden undersea current swept his submarine into the wreck, getting it temporarily stuck. Titan is equipped with drop weights, which can be thrown overboard to give it extra buoyancy, potentially freeing it and helping it float to the surface. But if it is stuck, for example, inside the Titanic, there could be little the crew would be able to do except wait for help. A banging noise picked up on sonar could be the trapped crew knocking on the hull of the sub to attract attention. But rescuers have still been unable to find the craft.
Equipment failure.
Titan could also have suffered a power outage or equipment failure. The sub relies on batteries to power the communications, and a failure could explain why it lost contact with the surface. But they also power the engines, the lights, and the heating.
So that means, you guys, so that means the lights possibly just went out, the heat, everything. So like, not only are you cut off from communication to the surface, but you are literally in cold and darkness. That is just beyond me, super sad. I'm gonna get back to it. But as I mentioned, to me it's sad anyway, regardless of, because these are human beings that are on the vessel, on the submarine, but you also have a 19-year-old kid, and yes, I'm going to call him a kid, a teenager, on board with his dad, and that is just horrific to me. Let's get back to it.
Failure would have left the sub dead in the water, in complete darkness, and in freezing temperatures. If that is the case, experts say the cold could kill quicker than the lack of oxygen. Questions have been raised over the quality of the sub after one passenger pulled out over fears the company building it were cutting corners. He discovered that scaffolding poles were being used as ballast and a video game controller was being used for steering.
I heard about that. Yeah.
After
that's
that,
just,
he demanded his
how do you
money
cut
back.
corners?
An Ocean Gate engineer
Like your life
also
is at
previously
stake. Like,
quit
how do you
over
cut
safety
corners
concerns
on something
about
like
the
that?
structural integrity of the sub, and an industry body wrote a letter in 2018 criticizing the company's experimental approach. Losing power would make the sub harder to find,
Way
and
experimental.
there will still be the matter of getting it back to the surface when its engines aren't working. They may still be able to surface, but there is no sign of the vessel yet. Alistair Grieg, a professor of marine engineering at the University College London, said rescue options will be extremely limited if the sub is without power.
Wow.
Another possibility is that the sub has become tangled on a piece of debris like a fishing net. Thousands of so-called ghost nets are swept around the deep ocean after being
Thousands of
lost
ghost nets.
by trawlermen.
Thousands.
Back in 2005, a Russian submersible
lot.
called AS-28 became tangled on just such a net while it was underwater off the Kamchatka Peninsula in far eastern Siberia. The net got caught in its propellers and caused it to sink to the seabed, with a British underwater drone brought in to cut the netting and free it. All 7 crew members made it safely to the surface
Well, at least
2
that was
days
good.
later. But they were stuck under just a few hundred feet of water, compared to the Titan's 13,000. To cut the craft free, rescuers will first have to find it, and sonar is not good at distinguishing the sub from the wreckage of the Titanic scattered around it. And even if it can be cut free, the Titan will still have to make it back to the surface on its own.
Right, and I just, on that point, like some of what I have heard is that there is no like definite rescue protocol for any vessel that is submerged that deeply into the ocean. Like he just mentioned, the successful rescue mission that was just a few hundred feet underwater. The Titan is over 14,000 feet deep into the ocean. Like, that is just beyond, it's incredible. That is, and I don't understand, how do you take a dive that deeply and cut corners on anything? And I do understand the CEO was one of the passengers, so maybe he just strongly believed, or because he had 3 prior successful, what would be considered successful dives, he just thought that it was, impenetrable. I have no idea. But as you heard, there's ghost nets, thousands of ghost nets under the ocean. And it's just not under the ocean, but within the ocean. So like, how do you, I don't know. And I'm wondering, did he fully disclose all of the dangers of taking a dive that deeply with his passengers? Because I'm curious, how did the dad have his 19-year-old son on board with him? Was it because they were just, told that, you'll be fine, da-da-da-da-da, or, so let's get back to it.
Transferring the crew to another vessel at that depth is impossible.
Catastrophic implosion. Heard about this one as
After the
well.
submersible suddenly stopped communicating with no explanation, a catastrophic implosion of the vessel has become a leading theory. G. Michael Harris, an experienced Titanic explorer, fears that is exactly what happened, 10,000 feet down, where the pressure is 350 times greater than at the surface. When a submarine's hull fails at depth, the pressure of the ocean will almost instantly crush it and anyone inside. Even a small fault in the carbon fiber and titanium hull could have caused the accident, and Titan's 3 previous voyages were cancelled over fears of structural fatigue. Owners OceanGate said the vessel, which features many
3
homemade
previous were
components
cancelled,
such as
you guys.
hardware store washers, had been repaired since, and was equipped with a sophisticated system to monitor for any problems in the hull. But if an issue had suddenly occurred deep underwater, it is doubtful the crew could have done anything in time to save themselves. Just such an incident occurred in 2017 when the Argentinian Navy submarine ARA San Juan went missing in the San Jorge Gulf. The wreck was only located a year later, scattered deep down on the seabed. It is not known exactly what caused the accident, but it is thought an electrical failure caused it to dive beyond its crush depth, causing an implosion, killing all 44 people
That is
on
horrible.
board.
Catastrophic.
If that is what happened to the Titan, then the crew would have been killed instantly.
And I'm thinking because they heard the pings or the bangs underwater that maybe the implosion possibility did not actually happen. But, you know, like I say, I'm just really, really, really curious if the CEO, who's also one of the passengers, if he fully disclosed to the passengers that the three previous, I said successful, I thought they were successful, that the previous dives had been canceled due to structural concerns. So, like, you know, I just can't not see a dad taking his son with him on something that was that experimental, that risky. If everything had been fully disclosed, and maybe it had been, I have no idea. Maybe the son was adamant to go with his dad because he knew it was risky and wanted to be with his dad, or maybe he was one of those headstrong teenagers that just, you know, hey, I'm grown, I want to do it too, I want to come along. Or was it that they were not being, you know, that the full level of danger was not disclosed to them when they signed up to be passengers? So let's see. Fire is another possibility.
Another possibility is a fire on board, perhaps caused by water getting into the electrics. In 2019, a blaze broke out inside the battery compartment of the Russian submarine Lost while it was 1,000 feet underwater. Fighting the fire in corridors as narrow as a few feet, the crew managed to get Lost back to its parent submarine, which hauled it to the surface. 14 submariners, some of the most experienced and highly decorated in the whole of the Russian Navy, were killed.
Wow.
If a similar blaze were to break out on board the Titan, then the results could easily be fatal. Even if the crew somehow got the flames under control, the fire could knock out the electronics and eat up the oxygen inside the tiny 21-foot craft.
There is
still a lot we don't know about the Titan's fate or the fates of the men on board. If the craft can somehow get itself to the surface, then there is hope that they can be saved. But if it is really stuck at the bottom of the ocean, then the chances of finding them alive are slim and fading fast.
Sad.
You steer the ship with a controller, with a joystick from a gaming system, you know, a home gaming system. There's special training just to learn how to get into an escape suit, in and out of that. It's a very tough thing to get into these kind of warm weather coveralls that will float you if, you know, you have to bail from a ship or escape from a submarine. Beyond that, no real training. When we went down, there were communication problems on every trip I've taken. Of the 4 separate dives I'd taken with Ocean Gate, every time
issues on every dive.
There was a problem with,
that's literally
at least,
playing Russian roulette.
You know, sporadically communicating with the surface. And again, I don't think that's their fault as much as just that's the nature of the beast. You know, when you're going 1,000 feet or 13,000 feet underwater, you're going to lose contact for a while.
Before we went, we had never seen the sub. We didn't know anything about it. There's very little information on the website. I didn't know at that point that you drive the thing with an Xbox game controller. I didn't know that the ballast was, you know, used construction pipes. And then you get the tour, and Stockton Rush, the designer of the sub, the CEO, explains to you that all of this stuff, the lights and the handles and the propellers, these are off-the-shelf parts. Because, well, not only are they inexpensive, but they're tried and true. They're mass-produced. The part we care about is the pressure vessel, the capsule where the people are.
Right.
And that he designed with NASA and the University of Washington. And that, he says, is as locked down as it gets. His exact words were, everything else can fail, the lights can go out, the propellers can stop, but you will still be alive. You are bolted in from the outside.
How long is the
question? There are 18 bolts in a circle around the hatch. And by the way, they only fasten 17 of them. The 18th one is way up high, and they say there's really no mathematical difference.
That's insane.
So you're right. The really nightmarish scenario is that they are alive at the surface, bobbing away, running out of air, and unable to get out.
That is insane, you guys. That's insane. Sorry, you guys. I don't want to block that. The OceanGate vessel is known as the Titan went missing. 5 men are believed to be on board. British billionaire Hamish, Canadian Air Force, has dispatched. Again, my question is, had the CEO fully disclosed? Now, this guy seems like, maybe everything was disclosed. The vessel itself, everything else go out, but, this is built like a tank, will still be alive. But what's the forethought? What's the thought beyond that? Okay, you're alive, but for how long? And in this event, what's the protocol? And, that event, what's the protocol? Like different possibilities. I understand it was experimental, but there should have been certain procedures set in place for, the unthinkable.
Minutes ago, I spoke to the founder of RMS Titanic and Titanic Expedition leader G. Michael Harris. He's been on several dives to the wreckage in a Russian submarine and knows how risky this trip was for the 5, including his close friend, Paul-Henri Narjolet.
I said I knew how risky it was, I suppose.
Michael, you've said that more people have been to outer space than have gone this deep into the ocean. If anything goes wrong this deep, you're on your own.
Wow.
Yeah, there's absolutely no recovery system that's set up for this depth of the ocean, which is, why we take so many precautions. We cross our T's, we dot our I's, and, we run so many different what-if scenarios so that we have answers in case something does come up, that we can actually correct the situation while we're dealing with it, so that we're actually proactive and, handling it and not being reactive.
You've been down to the Titanic wreck many times in a Russian sub. You refused to go down in this Titan sub. Why?
Well, the Russian sub, the French, the American Alvin, these are all different types of subs, but, basically designed the same way. We have a 6-foot sphere that's made out of solid titanium nickel steel. Wow. It's been tested. It's been certified. And, this is an experimental submersible. And I think, it's wonderful pushing the limits and the boundaries and,
wow.
Trying to move technology forward. But there are still just certain things I believe you need to do before you put yourself and other people's lives, in possible risk and peril.
Yeah, Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, who was one of the 5 people on this submarine, was said in an interview recently, I broke a lot of rules to get this sub launched and going. That's not the kind of thing you want to hear when you're going 2.5 miles deep into the ocean.
Not at all.
No, I mean, and like I said, I have nothing but respect for the man, for coming out and coming up with a new design. But you don't test this in 12,850 feet of water, 2.5 miles down, 6,000 pounds per square inch of outside pressure working on you.
Wow.
And, and I know they said, well, it's been down there 3 times before, and my thing is always a broken clock is right twice a day as well.
That's true.
According to OceanGate, if these 5 are alive, they have about 11 hours of oxygen left. But you say it's not just the oxygen levels that are critical here. It's the carbon dioxide levels that can build up after all this time.
Yeah, I mean, on board the subs, when we're diving, you have to have CO2 scrubbers that get changed out every 8 to 10 hours. And we carry, 4 of them, 5 of them, different ones to be able to switch these out as we're doing our salvage ops and work on the bottom of the North Atlantic. And so from what I've heard and, same thing that you've heard, is this was only supposed to be an 8-hour mission, and they were to go down and then come straight back. So I don't know if they would have the CO2 scrubbers on board, and those you need worse than you need the oxygen, or I would say they're actually tandem. Wow. But there's so many different variables working upon this that can go wrong. That your oxygen, CO2 scrubbers, you've got the pressure outside, stuff, you've got hypothermia. On the bottom, it's 29 degree outside water temp, and because salt water takes longer to freeze than fresh water. And so inside the submersible, we're usually somewhere between, 32 to 34 degrees. They weren't planning on 4 days of that. And you also need water. And, I understand they had a very small provision package from what I heard in the media. And, you need water to survive as well. So, there's so many other things besides the oxygen that I think people are hyper-focusing on that. And look, we're all praying, I got PH on board. I've known the man 30 years. We've worked together. And I want them all to come home safe. I really do, but conventional wisdom is that, after this much time and all the different variables that you're dealing with, it's just not looking good.
All right, Michael Harris, thanks so much for joining us and lending us your expertise tonight. Really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Bye-bye.